let's get into this. Our observations from Super Bowl weekend. There was a lot, and you said the word whelming. Not underwhelming, not overwhelming, just whelming.
Is that a word?
I think it might be. If
Should
not,
be.
it is now.
Should be.
Yeah, I was whelmed at best at everything. From start to finish, it was a mediocre, boring night, especially when you invest so much in the football season. Every week we come here speculating. You're so fired up about every matchup, and it comes down to a wet fart that we got last night. And that's how I felt about it.
A wet fart?
Yeah, because the Chiefs were never in it.
Yeah.
Unless you're an Eagles fan or a Chiefs hater, there was nothing to be really excited about. And then I was excited about halftime, and even that was, well, there's two extremes here.
Don't do it.
No. I didn't hate it. There's people that hate it. I think they're equally as wrong as people saying they loved it. You know, I get it. I understand. We all grew up with hip-hop. So to act like you didn't get it, no, we get it, okay? And I know his popularity. We're not old by any means. I understand. Even that was whelming to me because it's a Super Bowl performance. I wanted excitement. Maybe my expectations were off, but still whelming. And then the celebrations were equally as whelming. I didn't see anyone that thrilled to win the Super Bowl.
But I think your whole day was whelming because just for the...
It doesn't matter.
You got to put this in perspective.
No, it doesn't.
COVINO was a little under the weather after a week of Super Bowl fun in New Orleans.
That means my perspective was more accurate than yours because you're hobnobbing with people having a fun time.
Incorrect.
There was nothing fun about the game.
Incorrect. You sat at home by
And
yourself.
No, I was there with Theo, my dog. And he's my dog. And that means I was counting on the game to be entertaining because, again, invested an entire year watching for that. That's why I'm like, oh, man. Boom, boom, boom. I was waiting to be entertained. I wasn't like hoping it sucked. I was waiting to be entertained.
There was not
nothing
a time,
about it.
There was
fun.
not a moment in that game where you felt it was a game. That sounds ridiculous, but Philadelphia, total ball control. That's what she said. In the first half, like there was a point where it's like they had the game plan. We talked about it. Danny, I'll give you credit. All along, you're like, keep the ball out of Mahomes' hand. There was a time where it was like, is Philadelphia the only one on offense? The first three possessions by the Chiefs were 3 and out, 4 plays, and 3 and out. Like,
I'm here, Patrick Mahomes here, exclusive on the COVINO and Rich show. Just want to say I'm sorry for one of the most embarrassing performances by any QB, and it just wasn't our night. And any GOAT conversation between me and Brady is probably on pause for now.
Pump the brakes on that, right?
Yeah, pump the brakes, but we'll be back.
Have you guys, this was the entertaining part to me, late last night and starting this morning with the TV sports shows, have you ever seen the media turn on a player so quick as they turned on Patrick Mahomes?
That's what I find eye-rolling and
I don't think it was
funny
his fault, though.
About the world we live in, sports media, I guess.
It's a fickle world. That's
wins,
why I disassociate myself.
He wins that game, by far the greatest dude on the history of in the history of sports. He loses. Let's pump the brakes. GOAT. That never happened to Brady or Montana or anyone.
Well, that's because if you live in the world of hot takes, you have to, put it in reverse immediately. And we don't live in that world. We live in the sports world, but that's not our angle and never was, never will be.
My question is, if the narrative for the past year or so has been that the refs are responsible for him winning, shouldn't we just credit the refs for him losing then?
Yeah, the Eagles were dominant, man. Eagles were dominant.
Eagles got all the calls.
Yeah, they were dominant last night. The Chiefs never had a shot. They played large. And if you want to look at the positives, here are the 2 positives that I took away. As far as the game, the storyline. The fact that they lost, came back, and a story of revenge and perseverance is incredible. I think that's for the history books. Yo, man, Jalen Hurts lost the Super Bowl, came back, and clobbered the team that beat him. That is like a story of motivation.
Pummeled.
Mm-hmm. And that I love. And as far as the Super Bowl halftime show, I think the takeaway here is they went artsy and took a chance. Maybe creative and artsy isn't what the Super Bowl needs, but they went for something different. Anyone under 40 loved it. Anyone over 40 really didn't, and it's generational, and that's okay. I like the fact that they took a chance on it. Not everything has to be dancing sharks, because that's equally as eye-rolly. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need dancing sharks either. But at the same time, I don't know how deep I want to get for my halftime show.
Maybe just left shark.
Under 40. First of all, and second, I was whelmed by Kendrick Lamar, who I like.
Right.
I have literally his songs on my phone right now.
Yeah.
It just, I don't think translates to the stage of the Super Bowl.
As I heard someone
Because we've
say,
been conditioned for fireworks.
That's a good way to put it.
as I heard someone say, Muncie, Kendrick Lamar, that would have been a hell of a Grammy night performance.
Yeah.
But the Super Bowl halftime show warrants a spectacle.
Yes.
And
Or like a hit where everyone jumps up and you're just so excited. There was no surprises. We knew SZA was going to be there. What was the surprise?
The casual
Serena
music
Williams.
fan.
Yeah.
Serena Williams.
Serena C walking on her ex.
Samuel L. Jackson.
And you don't get it, man. That's Drake's ex-girlfriend.
And it took me
so
2
what?
seconds to connect the dots. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, is that Serena Williams? Wait a minute. Oh, Drake. But listen, the Super Bowl halftime show, we've been saying it for a year. It's clearly they're going after a younger demo, which, listen, they already got, you, if you're older. If you're like our parents' generation, they got you, or you're going to be, eventually dead in the next 20 years. They don't need you. They need the younger demo. Kendrick Lamar was a fine choice, but if you were looking, like Monty said, for that everyone jump out of their chair moment, They Not Like Us is a monster hit.
Yeah.
But other than that, if you were a casual music listener, you might not have known any other song. Any other song. That's the truth, because he doesn't cross over to mainstream like the Kiss FM in your hometown and the Z100 and the
that's what I'm saying.
Y100.
You could look at that as a positive. Like, not everything needs to be that way. And they took a chance. I'm not sure if it worked. But again, much like everything in the United States, it's kind of split down the middle. It depends who you ask.
If you put like a huge country artist up there who has wide mainstream success, I probably wouldn't know most of the songs.
Yeah.
Because I don't follow
I'd probably be
country
saying
a
the
lot.
same thing. Like, I hate this rootin' tootin' stuff.
So you're never going to make everyone 100% happy.
That's
so
a
it's
great
like,
point.
just put up a good product. And I enjoyed, as a visual and musical performance, I enjoyed it.
Oh, I thought it was really interesting. I
did.
I wanted more.
I thought
was
it
like,
was-
okay, this is interesting. I like where it's going. I like Samuel L. Jackson as
all I
Uncle
needed.
Sam, trying to dictate where the storyline went, and Kendrick Lamar is still doing his own thing. The symbolism, I get all that. Very cool, but it wasn't that exciting, which was the mood of the entire night. So maybe it's very fitting for a whelming game, as
How
we
about
said.
this? How about, let's not take Covino's word for it, sitting by himself with his dog. Let's not take my word
Wait,
for it.
you think
having
your
a
word?
party at my
Hold
house.
on.
Let's go to a guy that's
What about LeVar Burton?
let's
Should we
go to
take his word for it?
Let's go to a guy that's still in New Orleans. 'cause
Hold
he
on,
was
hold
at
on.
the game. Dan Beyer.
Hold on.
Hold on.
What up, Dan?
That's my drop. That was not me starting to sing.
confused.
Live from New Orleans, it's our very own Dan Beyer. He was there. I saw all of his coverage on social media, some great pics. How's it going, man? And how was it from your perspective?
And by the way, is all the green confetti out of your hair?
I did not get hit with green confetti, but there may be some making its way back with me as a little souvenir keepsake.
Ziploc bag.
Yeah, who knows? The Super Bowl halftime show did not translate to the crowd that was intended in attendance. It did not. It did not work in that fashion.
So it does make you wonder, though. It's like, do you cater to the consumer? But at the same time, and I say this all the time, I actually learned this in marketing class. Marketing 101 tells you that, Coca-Cola is not advertising to you. Everybody knows what Coca-Cola is. We know what it is. They're advertising to younger people, and that's the NFL's way of gaining a younger audience. They're bringing Kendrick Lamar in here, even though he's not that young. He's been doing it since the early 2000s.
Yeah, he's in his late 30s.
Right, but again, it's not for you. We need to understand that. But it's interesting to hear that the vibe in your living room, or at least in 50% of the living rooms, was the same as the vibe in the stadium. Not that exciting.
Well, remember, guys, when the NFL, they struck a deal with Rock Nation years back, and that changed the Super Bowl halftime show, where now we've had artists based either in hip hop or R&B ever since really that agreement was made. So you had the Weeknd Super Bowl 55. I think he's crossed over to be, mainstream. Yeah. We had the great Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg show that I think everybody loved in L.A. And then you had Rihanna, Usher, and now Kendrick Lamar. And so I think that at some point you do need songs. And that was the tough part of last night is I don't know if Monty said it or who said it, but there's only one, maybe two songs you know of Kendrick Lamar. Maybe Rich, you said it. So nobody's singing along. And that was a point that I've made to many people last night and today, is that they played Mr. Brightside by the Killers in the fourth quarter, and all of the Eagles fans were singing it.
Right.
And they played Sweet Caroline. And, we know what happens when Sweet Caroline's played at a sporting event. Everybody's singing it. Nobody was really into it last night.
However,
it wasn't the
when they hit
worst
the
that I have seen.
A minor, it gave me they gave me some chills, man. Because
but that was the only point.
I
right?
know, but still, everybody. That was what the death of Drake's career, as the stories go. But yeah, that was kind of cool. But interesting to hear your perspective, Dan. I thought maybe more excitement at the stadium.
I don't think your dad didn't get that reference. My point is, next year, San Francisco.
They clearly aren't caring about your dad.
Right.
And I think what Dan is saying here is that with Rock Nation, we're not going to get Metallica next year either, because they're from the Bay Area.
Rock Nation's going to give you a younger, more rhythmic, hip-hop leaning, urban leaning radio like audience. That's the truth, right? So if you look at the last 5 shows, now San Francisco, you might say, well, isn't Metallica from the Bay Area?
Yep.
Is that the year they do go? Does Rock Nation go rock? Do they maybe say is like a Post Malone, Miley Cyrus, maybe go back a little more mainstream? Like, where do they go? Where do they go from here?
They do a mix of all that. What says you, DB?
That was the tough part about last night, as you mentioned the special guest. We knew SZA was going to be performing with him. There was nobody that came out that did a song or did a verse or did anything with him. The special guests were, as you said, Serena dancing and Samuel Jackson speaking.
Yeah.
And there is something out, like we've talked about it on the show, like, ladies and gentlemen, blah, blah, blah. You're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like that's the coolest thing.
I thought it was a
right?
big surprise that they fit 150 people in one little car. That was a big surprise. Yeah, and as a half Mexican guy, I find that to be cultural appropriation.
Wasn't even a Tacoma.
I know. So I took a little offense to that. I'm like, he's making fun of Mexicans, I think. Joking.
50. Remember Super Bowl 50? They had Coldplay, and then they brought out Beyonce, and I think they also brought out Bruno Mars. So you had Coldplay, who you thought could carry the whole show, and they're like, you know what? Let's add Beyonce to this, and let's also throw in Bruno Mars, who, by the way, were the performers in previous Super Bowls not too far from that. In 47, Beyonce did it. In 48, it was Bruno Mars. So, like, you even have that, like, level of it. Like, there is something neat of where all the stars get together. The biggest Super Bowl controversy ever came with Justin Timberlake and Janet Jackson, right? Like, there's a crossover to what? Yeah, what happened? Anybody got video, by the way, just to refresh our memories?
What happened?
No. Yeah. I think that pops. That stuff does pop.
I'm convinced. I'm still convinced to this day of my lifetime. Other than like the big ones like Prince, obviously Michael Jackson, which was huge. The 2001 Super Bowl show was one of the greatest, and because it touched all generations. You had Aerosmith, which was a legendary band, everyone knew. You had NSYNC, which was for like younger people coming off of the late 90s, early 2000s. You had Britney Spears, who everyone loved. Then you had Mary J. Blige come out for a little bit of the older school hip hop. Then you had Nelly come out, who was contemporary hip hop. So I feel like a show like that touches every little generation, has something for everybody, is something that we need. You know, just like I thought the show with like Dre, Snoop, Eminem, all that, even though it was more hip hop skewed, dude, it touched every generation.
Yeah,
that's what we need.
NFL's not hurting; they can do whatever they want.
Stick with what you said, though, Spot. You're never going to please everybody, because sometimes when you do all that, if you get Metallica and Chris Brown, it feels forced sometimes. You know what I mean? Like, that sounds dumb to me. You know, so. You know, the NFL took a chance. I'm okay with it. The whole night, like I said, it matched the vibe of the entire night when you think about it. Everything was just okay. And when you saw the reaction of the Eagles actually winning, the most excitement, we had to do our research. Because I was like, Jalen Hurts, I get it. He's a very poised, level-headed dude. But you do want to see him hoisting the trophy like, we won, yeah! You want to see excitement. You watched an entire season to see a somber celebration.
I'm still processing. A little lethargic.
You know what? We had to do our research, Sam, and we looked up the Disney World commercial. You know, Jalen Hurts, you just won the Super Bowl. And he does the I'm going to Disney World. And that was the most excitement I saw. And it was emotional, and I loved that. I wish we had more of that. But again, it goes back to what Spot said. we're never going to be fully satisfied or fully pleased. Overall, it was an sort of night.
I don't like poised people.
Yeah, I wanted excitement, but
I'm not a fan of the poised. I like excitement. I like emotions. In fact,
the fans were excited.
Jalen Hurts made me roll my eyes like, this guy looks like he just won a 50-50 lottery at his kid's school. He won the Super Bowl.
The game was such a pummeling, though. That's why
that's why.
It wasn't like a last-second decision. It was like this game was in the books by pretty much halftime, let's be honest.
Yeah,
third quarter. And so by the time the game was over, it was like, yeah, we won.
Yeah,
we kicked their butt.
When it's 34-0, I mean, you're going to win the entire second half. In fact, DB, I was going to ask you, at home watching, it felt like after the Cooper DeShawn interception, the game was pretty much over. Did it feel that way there in the stadium?
Well, Danny, you must be on X. That's exactly what I tweeted. I think this is over at that point because it was Kansas City had done nothing, and they did not. You mentioned earlier the early part of this game, Kansas City didn't even try to run. The Eagles had 18 rushing attempts compared to Kansas City's 1. So even when Kansas City did have the ball in the limited fashion, when they weren't down by the 34, they were only down by 10 or less in certain parts, they chose to throw the ball. And I think that was a big, big problem. Not that they were going to win the game and run over Philadelphia, but Patrick Mahomes is not going to beat the Eagles by himself. And I think the Chiefs' game plan forced him to try to do that. We saw how it turned out.
When Kansas City couldn't put anything together at the end of the first half, and you're like, all right, I'm able to put some points on the board. You're like, all right, it's 24-0.
You still thought they'd make an adjustment.
Well, you thought 24-0. Everyone in my house who was watching was saying, all right, Casey gets the ball. All right, they'll drive, and they'll get the 2-point conversion. And then it'll be 24-8, a 2-score game. And when Kansas City came out in the third, and it was a quick 3-and-out, I'm like, yo, this is not like we're not even going to get an ounce of excitement.
No.
Like this is like the most boring. Again, at no point were you like, this is a game.
Like, where were those magical Mahomes drives that we're used to?
It happened when Nick
no
Sirianni
protection.
was getting Gatorade on him.
by the
That's
way-
when he did it.
He by the way, his Gatorade bath came before the 2-minute
warning.
warning.
And that's when the
I noticed
Xavier
that.
Worthy touchdown, I think, happened.
Well, once you put out Kenny Pickett, anything's
Had no
possible.
problem with that.
But
Game was decided.
You know what's interesting is
3 minutes left.
Yeah, it was over.
No, but it was that the game was over. They could have poured
It was.
Gatorade on Sirianni with 3 minutes
But-
left in the first half.
I'll tell you this. I
like that.
Patrick Mahomes being in the game, there was a play where he almost had his arm taken off, like Brock Purdy did against the Eagles in the NFC Championship game. It's about with 9 minutes to go. He fumbled and Philadelphia recovered. I had no idea why Mahomes was still in the game, guys. And then I realized, there's Super Bowl records to break. Travis Kelce broke Jerry Rice's all-time record for most receptions in Super Bowls.
Got him by 2 now, right?
Yeah, DB, it's so funny you would say that. I said that to our buddy Bo, who's in the editing room today in Muncie, before we went on the air. I said, the bummer for me is that because there was so much garbage, essentially yardage and time at the end, Mahomes and a couple people padded their postseason stats, and the story is being not like historically, it'll be like, well, Mahomes did throw for
Like
200
when
or
they look
300
back on
yards.
it.
Yeah,
It's
you
like,
look back at the score, too, unfortunately. That's what they'll see.
yeah. You know what? One person I did change my mind on because Jalen Hurts was so boring. I really,
It wasn't. By the way, I don't think it was just him. I thought everybody, and it could have been, because they clobbered him, but it could have been a sense of relief too. But everything. I think everybody's reaction was sort of like not excited.
I really changed my mind, and we're allowed to do this, guys. This is not a, you don't have to be a stubborn ass where you make your opinion and that's it forever. I sort of saw a different side of Nick Sirianni with his kids last night and him crying post-game, and he went from guy I grew up with, I didn't personally grow up with him, but growing up on the East Coast, New York, New Jersey, he just feels like, I don't know, like a guy you want to like slap in the face. Like he's got that look, like a
He used to be number one on your most punchable face list.
It's called a hate to face.
Does it count when it's coming from a guy with a punchable face like Rich Davis?
shut up.
I'm just wondering.
But no, like a guy like Nick Sirianni, when they win, he's got this arrogant look, very Jersey, very Philly. So what I didn't like about Nick Sirianni had nothing to do with who the man he is. I just didn't like his vibe.
Hey,
Seeing him with his kids,
That's
holding
called
his,
being superficial, Rich.
holding his
you
son,
saw a human side
and
of him.
seeing his other kid there, and him showing some tears. I'm like, you know what? I'm the jerk for
I
I'm
like
the jerk
what
for
he
judging
had
him.
to say about this team loves each other. He said that multiple times throughout the night, that they're what team is all about, and how they didn't want to let each other down. And I think we proved the question of the week. There was greater motivation from trying to get vengeance in this Super Bowl than trying to three-peat, because it looked like they had winner's fatigue. It looked like the Chiefs were never really in it. They didn't know how to really make any adjustments. They didn't seem pumped about anything. Their body language was,
hate
was
that. I'm
super
telling
weak.
you.
So again, I think that the greater motivator was the fact that the Eagles had been there and lost to them, and they weren't going to let that happen again. And I think, although we've painted a really boring picture, the great takeaway here is perseverance and the comeback story of the Eagles. And I think that's inspiring. Dan Beyer, who's on site, before you go, man, any other observations you want to leave us with?
I think your Sirianni take, Rich, is very on point. There were a lot of people that came up to him after the game, and I'm curious to see if he'll be more grounded in his ways moving forward now that he is a Super Bowl champion, because there's responsibility that goes with that. I am also just curious on the Jalen Hurts love fest and how far it takes him in Philadelphia before we go back to the usual Philadelphia ways.
Yeah,
we have until the opening week of week one, and then we'll see if it starts to change at all.
It is funny, Dan, because the Nick Sirianni narrative for me, and I'm sure a lot of people went from like, yeah, this guy to, oh, look at him crying. He's got his kids, and but the Jalen Hurts being very ho-hum about winning. You know what it reminded me of? Remember when Paul Skeens won? Rookie of the year.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God.
And Livy Dunn's all of a sudden, he's just standing there like a dud. It's like, I can't vibe with those type of people because I'm a very excitable person. So I'm like, if you win the Cy Young, if you win the Super Bowl, if you win something, show me something.
It's that age-old question of, act like you've been there before. Look, they never won, though, so be excited about it. You're allowed to be excited. But then again, that's kind of what makes him a great quarterback. He's a poised, calm, cool, and collected kind of guy. But I thought the whole team was... Again, maybe relief, Rich. Who knows?
Yeah.
Dan Beyer, thanks for your
buddy.
insight, man. Have a
Thanks,
safe
guys.
trip back. Dan
Thank
Beyer
you.
live from New Orleans. We had a great time with him
Get
out
that
there
out.
and a great week in New Orleans. If you missed any of our shows, catch the podcasts.
Get all that confetti out of your crevices before you get home.
Yeah.